Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2026 horror thriller Grizzly Night. The film is directed by Burke Doerne and it stars Charles Edson, Oded Fair, Brett Basinger, Joel Johnson, Lauren Call and Jack Griffo. Now the film is based on true life events and it's set in 1967 in Montana's National Park, where on this one particular night in 1967, 9 miles apart from each other, there were two fatal bear attacks, and this film depicts the events at that time. So we've got like some campers that are camping out in the woods. You've got some people that are kind of camping at this organised, camping hut place. And it follows the events of these campers and what kind of led them to be targeted by these bears, really, and then the aftermath of the bear attacks with a doctor trying to save the lives and others kind of trying to track the bears down in order to stop them from committing more horrific acts. Right, so what are my thoughts on Grizzly Night? Bear attack films can be interesting watches. They can be thrilling watches when they're done correctly. This one, if you like, has to balance the fine line between telling a thrilling story but also staying true to the events as close as it can, I suppose, without glamorizing it, I suppose. And that's not an easy line to balance. And as a result, what we get here is obviously a cheaper made film. It's not micro budgeted or anything, but it's obviously like smaller budget. It feels like a made for TV movie, and you don't see an awful lot of the events of the bear attacks. And what I mean by that is, you might see a bear, you'll see a growl, or you'll see the bear growling, and then you'll see people being dragged off in the sleeping bags. And that's about as much as you see, to be honest. You'll see the aftermath of the attacks, with the victims covered in blood and being treated by the doctor at the camping location, and going into shock and all that kind of drama that goes on, the medical drama side of it. But you don't see the maulings or, the bites or anything like that, really. Now, the actors, for the most part here, do a good job of portraying the terror involved in a bear attack. For example, as it's dragging people off in the sleeping bags, the actress in the sleeping bag will be bellowing and screaming in terror, and they do a good job of portraying the fact that they are in mortal danger here. They're being dragged off and attacked. So it does translate the terror a little bit, but like I say, you don't see an awful lot. Now, I suspect the main reason for that is budgetary reasons. Now, like I say, you do get clips of this bear and a bear growling. I don't know if they're clips that they've kind of hired for the movie. I don't know if they had a trained bear on site. But it's one of the two, So if they had this trained bear on site, they'd maybe film it doing its growling and snarling and stomping about. And that's really about it. They don't really have the budget to kind of show a bear attacking anybody and that kind of stuff. So it kind of, it feels like a tame made for TV movie in a sense of it doesn't show a great deal. It's more about the events that happened in 1967. And interestingly, kind of at the end, it gives you some facts and figures about what happened after the events. There was some sweeping changes made in regards to how people were instructed on dealing with bears. You're not allowed to feed them. Because at the time, people would feed the bears and stuff. which sounds foolish when you think about it now, but at the time, the people openly did it. So they kind of stopped all that, and then they, put a few other things in place that kind of, hopefully reduced these kind of attacks going forward. But it also doesn't change the fact that two bear attacks happen in the same night so close together had never happened before, and it's never happened since. So it was an unusual event anyway, and you don't really ever find out the reasons behind the attacks or anything like that. They don't try and pretend that these bears have gone crazy or they've got rabies or anything like that. They don't even tend. They give you some kind of an explanation at the end in text as to potentially what it could have been with one of the bears, certainly, but it's speculation, really. So I mean, for a film of this kind of budget, it manages to portray, the events at that time pretty well. The performances are all of a strong standard. We've got Oded Fehr in the film, who you may remember from the Mummy films and the Resident Evil movies. He plays the surgeon, the doctor, who is trying to save the people's lives from the bear maulings and stuff. So there's a good standard of acting in the film that kind of immerses you into the events that are happening. But like I say, it feels like a production that's been made for TV, so it doesn't feel like high production values or anything like that. But it manages to portray what the story it wants to tell reasonably well. But it's not a typical like grisly horror film or anything. It's like I say, it's more of a dramatization in many ways. It's more accurately described as a thriller, really, a drama stroke thriller than a horror. But a lot of the posters and the stuff that are going along with the movie are kind of presenting it as like a horror because they know that'll probably get more people to watch it, but it's not really. It doesn't show a great deal. There's not a lot of graphic shots in here of anything like that, and like I say, you don't get to see an awful lot of the bears doing any of the attacks because you just don't. You just see sleeping bags being dragged off, really, for the most part. So yeah, I mean, it's not a bad film. It's just average at best, I suppose. It's they do their best to tell the story of what happened in 1967, but they don't glamorize it in any way, shape or form. I didn't feel anyway. So that's my thoughts on Grizzly Night. Let me know your thoughts if you want to check this film out, and I will be back with plenty more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.